here from Alpha, and yeah, really excited to go over this with you today. And also, thanks for the calls and emails, and I've set up a few Teams meetings with people about what they're learning on Copilot from the webinars. So this has been that's really encouraging for me. I find for me, and it's probably the same for most people, we really learn by doing, and so rolling up our sleeves and actually getting lost in the tools and learning that way. So this has been no exception to that rule. I started off last week with notebooks, just doing a lot of research, watching a lot of videos on YouTube up until about Monday this week, and I was not getting any value in them. And I was actually like this close to canceling this webinar until I thought of a use case that was good for me, and then I started to play with it, and now I'm totally converted. I really love this feature for Copilot, and Kim and I were talking about this before we jumped in here. We're definitely going to be rolling this out for sales to marketing, for myself. I see a lot of opportunities for the ops team as well. So if you don't get a ton of value out of this, like just talking about it and seeing it, take 15, like all you have to do is take 15 minutes today, or 15 minutes on Monday, set up an environment and start to ask some questions to it, because this is awesome. Can't say enough good things about it. The problem, we'll start by talking about the problem that Notebooks is trying to solve here. So for me, when I'm working in Copilot, if I'm working on a project, if I'm working on a task that's just taking a long time, then I'll have, frequently like several chats spun up in Copilot about that one specific thing. And sometimes, like, if this is a long project that I'm working on, I'll have 10 plus chats, and that I have to reference and look back for and all that kind of stuff. And so each time I'm spinning up a new chat in Copilot or any of the other AI tools that we're using, it's like I'm providing the context again. Copilot obviously has context across our tenant, but I need to provide additional context each time I'm creating a chat. So I'm redescribing the project, I'm reattaching files, re-referencing meeting history, doing all these types of things. And first of all, it's a bit of a pain. It takes quite a bit of time to keep doing that. I get pretty impatient with myself that I have to keep doing that and re-explaining. But then also, the details aren't consistent across all of the different chats, and so things get lost. I drop things, I forget things, and it's certainly like it feels like a limitation in AI in general, but more specifically within Copilot. And that's what Notebooks has been introduced for. It's also called projects in ChatGPT and Claude. There's Notebooks LM within Google. And basically what we do is we create a new notebook, and we start to add all the different source material, all the different references that we want to use for that project or for that reoccurring task or whatever. And so these sources can be files, they can be emails, website links, meetings, entire SharePoint libraries. And then once we have all that context in one place, then Copilot begins to reason across that selected content. It becomes an expert in that specifically, and it starts to create a much better output, and it just learns a lot better than if it's looking at data across the entire organization, because it's very specific in what it has to look at to give us that output. Now, obviously, it's the thing that makes it great is also it can feel like a little bit of a limitation as well, because it can't search everything automatically, right? Like it can't search across the tenant. It doesn't know what it doesn't know, and so we have to make sure that we're adding in all the context that it needs or that we need it to know. This doesn't replace SharePoint, doesn't replace OneDrive. It relies on those different platforms and apps to build that context. And obviously, as everybody knows here, we still have to obviously be reviewing. That first draft that it gives is much stronger than if it was just in a regular chat, but we still have to be looking it over. And just to clarify, like obviously chat is still a super important piece of Copilot. We're still going to use chat if we're looking for that one-off answer. Draft me this email, revise this paragraph, give me information on X, Y, Z. I still use it all the time, and I'm sure everybody here still will. But we start to use a notebook when we're going to be coming back to that conversation, that notebook, that project over and over again. And so, as the simple rule says here, open it once, use chat, come back to it. We're going to make a notebook. Okay, and you can have as many notebooks as you want. I don't think that there's any limit, and so we can become quite proficient in this. All right, we'll jump into the demo right now. Oh, that's so this is office.com. We're in the Copilot dashboard. We click on the apps and more button, and we bring up notebooks. And this will list out all of your all the different notebooks that you've created, and then it'll also start to curate some notebooks automatically based on what it knows about you. And so the one that we're going to be looking at is AlphaPay. So we've looked at this quite a bit, this product that we have, and it's just a really great use case for using Copilot. And so I'll start off with this is the overview page, and we'll just start with the summary so you have a little bit of background here. So it says the notebook centers on developing, positioning, and demonstrating AlphaPay, an AI-driven accounts payable automation platform with a strong focus on client pain points, workflow transformation, sales execution. It combines product design insights, real-world demo learnings, and messaging strategies to refine how the solution reduces manual effort, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so this is like the hub for me to be sharing with our sales team and our marketing team for anything related to conversations that we're having about AlphaPay with our clients. All right, now on the left-hand side here, we've got the reference button. And this is where we can start to bring in files. We can select files in here. We can also drag and drop them. We can bring up meetings here, emails, and then also entire SharePoint libraries. And so this is where we start to reference all of our information. You can also add a link. We could have this going out to a different website. If just as an example, if you're a home builder, you could be linking bylaws for a certain city if you're having like a building permit notebook kind of thing. And so if everything that you need isn't 100% in SharePoint, we can start to link out to the internet, which is a really great feature as well. And then as you can see here, I've referenced quite a few things. It's mostly meetings that I've referenced, the transcripts below. I've also referenced some recent proposals that we've done. These are the meetings as well. And then I added the Alpha brand guidelines so that if it's generating content for me, that it's got a better understanding of our brand guidelines. The limitation here, it's not really doing a good job of referencing this, which I'll get into in a little bit. But that might just be because I'm still green in this as well, and I'll figure out how to make sure that the branding is better. Okay, yeah. So we're in the overview here, and like thinking from my perspective as I've been building this, we hired somebody recently. My sister, actually based out of Ontario, and she is now selling AlphaPay. And she doesn't have a background in accounts payable. She definitely doesn't have a background in AlphaPay. And I told her, if we bring you on, I'm not going to be able to spend a ton of time with you. So there's going to be a lot of self-learning that's going on. And so what she's able to do, I'm able to share this notebook with her. And then the first thing that she would do, that I would recommend to her, or that I will recommend to her, is create an audio overview of this entire notebook. And so we'll listen to a few seconds of it, but this is something where if you're working on a new project, internal project, external project for a client, if anything that you're working on in a notebook, if you want to bring some people into the fold and share this notebook with them, this, like, I want you to think of this audio from that perspective on how they can get up to speed very quickly. And so,
What if the biggest value of an AI
can you hear
invoice
that?
tool is not that it reads invoices fast, but that it stops those invoices from disappearing into inboxes, paper piles, approval bottlenecks, and weird little manual rituals that everybody swears are temporary?
Yeah, that was the thing that jumped out at me. You go in expecting an AI story, and then pretty quickly you realize this is really a workflow story.
Exactly. We are looking at a huge set of AlphaPay demos.
And so you get the idea. It's pretty engaging audio file. Not only are they summarizing the information, but they're also creating really great. They're doing a great analysis on it and providing some insights that I necessarily haven't thought of before. So I think that this is such a great feature for when we're starting to add people into projects and adding them into notebooks here. The next thing that I'll show you is the mind map. I'm not sure how often I will use this, but if you're a visual learner, this kind of maps out what you've got going on in the notebook. And so it obviously knows this is the AlphaPay platform. It goes into the buyer pane. You can click on this. It gives you a really high level AI explanation on summarizing this here. And then you can dig into it a little bit further and find out, okay, what are the 6 things that have come up consistently across the resources that are specific to the buyer pane. And then the same thing for product workflow, and then sometimes it allows you to go even deeper. Now, I haven't even really added that much data into this, and so this, I'm assuming, will just continue to grow the more information that it has. Yeah, but again, I don't know how much I would use this. Somebody might have a great use case for this. I'd love to hear what that is. But and so going back to the example with my sister, with Deidre, when she's getting up to speed on on AlphaPay, she can actually build herself a study guide here. And so there can be like a summary, topic pages, flashcards, and then she can start to build different types of quizzes to test her knowledge. Okay, and so another use case for this is if you're onboarding a new employee, or if you're rolling out a new policy and you want people to make sure that they're reading and engaging with it, you can invite them to this notebook and you can start to create quizzes and that kind of thing to make sure that they're reading the material. And everything that we're creating shows up on this created content navigation over here. And so here's a quick study guide summary, and it's fairly high level, but it does a pretty good job of summarizing everything that's coming up consistently across the file, or across all the files. And we jump back to overview. Okay, and I'm probably fairly basic in a lot of ways, but the thing that got me super excited about this was the infographic. And I work across Claude. I'm very proficient in Claude, ChatGPT, and Copilot, and I have a lot of trouble creating like a really great workflow diagram, really great infographic, and so when I saw that, I didn't have like a lot of hopes, honestly, for this, but all I did was click the quick create document, and it spat out an infographic that not only goes over the workflow, but it also has all of my buyer pains. It has how Alpha Pay fixes those pain points. It's got a very good visual of what the actual platform kind of looks like, and this is just something that totally blew my mind. All I did was press. I didn't even tell it anything that I wanted, and this was the first draft. And obviously the branding isn't correct. Like that's not our logo and that kind of thing. So I haven't got there yet on how to change that up. But that's if Copilot can't do that, then that's an easy thing for someone else to fix. But that this is a first draft. I mean, this explains everything that I talk about on my calls, and it's just an awesome first draft. And then I asked it to take that I didn't want something so busy. All I wanted was an infographic that goes through our the workflow specifically for AlphaPay. And this was like a 2-sentence prompt that I gave it, and then it spat out this. It's given us new branding again. I think this is actually Microsoft branding for sure, but you know, again, first draft, this is just totally awesome. And then as I started to create this for me, it's like, okay, we have to get our sales and marketing team their own notebook so that we can start to create like an internal project for creating materials and also strategy and all that kind of thing. Okay, back to the overview. So we can create a spreadsheet. This isn't like a great data source for creating a spreadsheet, but you can get a bit of an idea of what it can do. So all I did was press that quick create button, and it built a spreadsheet that goes over essentially everything within that all the transcripts that I've got here. So product features, client requirements, pricing implementation, demo activity log, and organize it within about 1 or 2 minutes. I could see this being more obviously useful for finance and that kind of thing, but maybe there's a use case for it within here. I would say that the PowerPoint is a limitation of this. Again, unless I'm doing something wrong and I'm prompting it incorrectly, I'm not totally I wouldn't use this for building PowerPoint decks, but maybe as a rough first draft to start to get an idea on how Copilot would organize the data. But again, it's okay. It's okay. So now we'll pop over to the overview. So those were the quick create buttons. This is like very generic, where I'm not actually even prompting it. It's creating that without me having to tell it to do anything. But this is where we start to get some leverage, is the Copilot section. So that's what's on the right-hand side here. And we can start to ask it questions without having to give it a ton of context. It's like it knows that we're talking about AlphaPay already. And the first thing that I asked it to do was create a proposal for me for one of our clients. And it was able to pull that from the reference material here. And then similar to Copilot and any of the other apps, it started to go back and forth with me to create that proposal. And from here, I said, okay, this looks great. Now I want you to create a playbook on how to build them going forward. And so once it had done that, all I did was click these 3 dots here and then edit in Pages. And now you can find this document over here. And so all the different things that if we're generating some great artifacts and that kind of thing within Copilot here, we can now add it as a page, and we can reference that whenever we need under created content. Another example of this is I asked it to give me all of our client pain points that are coming up in calls, and it typed that out here, and I asked it to bring it over to the Pages. And it gave me this document that I can then reference as well. Okay, any questions so far on this? I'll get into a few different use cases and that kind of thing. But do we have anything that anybody has any questions on? I love it too.
Hey DJ, a couple questions for you.
Shoot.
So, do you know if you can upload handwritten notes? So I saw Google unleashed a feature where you can scan like your notebook and pull it into Notebook LM or whatever, and it will read actually your printed notes.
That's a good question. I mean, I think so. I mean, we can try it out. I don't see why I wouldn't be able to, because it can usually read JPEGs and all that kind of stuff, PNGs.
Okay. Second question, so I guess I'm trying to, so I was trying this notebook a few months ago too, and what I found was it wasn't able to keep the conversation going. So like if I left the notebook and came back, it forgot what we were talking about before. Is that just like this is new feature now where it actually is starting to remember the conversation thread?
I haven't I've only been using it for the week, so I can't speak too much to that, but I haven't had any issues with that specifically. But
That's
yeah,
cool.
I mean, yeah, they have been working on this quite a bit. I know that. I mean, even like the UI's changed so much. They're also using Work IQ in here, which is a big difference for, referencing past conversations and that kind of thing. But yeah.
And so then, like, I'm trying to understand too, if like I'm a project manager, as you know, so like, how would I use this versus like a SharePoint site? So it seems like this is more about, like you said, like I guess maybe your use cases, but like training, summarizing a lot of technical information, producing workflows. Like I guess there's like a create function that is super valuable. But to your point, like I guess you still need SharePoint if you're gonna have all of your documentation in another repository somewhere.
Yeah, and so from there, I would reference that SharePoint site right from here.
Yeah.
And so it's got access to all those documents. It's nice if they're all in one SharePoint library, because then we don't have to think about, adding those documents as they come up. And so as long as they're being dumped in there, then we can then I could be referencing them. And then, ideally, we're just bringing in those different status meetings and that kind of thing as well, and emails.
Okay. Yeah. Super cool.
Yeah.
And I see it valuable, Cody, from like, if you're using other models like ChatGPT, it's always had projects, right? And you could have like 20 conversations in one project. Copilot never had that. And so I personally always found it hard in Copilot to like organize all my different conversations. So I see Notebook now being able to serve that purpose where I can have, one notebook, one project, and then 30 conversations within it. And it should, my assumption is that it'll reference all those different 30 conversations every time I start a new chat. So I find that part valuable.
A question for you.
Shoot, Michelle.
So if you're creating a reference, so you put a couple files in and it reads through it and it generates its summary and what the key insights are. But then you go back later and you add, 10 more files. Is it going to adjust the summary and the key insights based on what you add to it?
Yeah. So there's the refresh button right here at the top. You can click this. I think it automatically does it to the audio overview. I think it might incorporate that, but if not, you just click on this again and it'll recreate it for you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, we've got 5 more minutes. I've got a few things to go over, but I just wanted to mention one thing in case people have to get going. We've talked a lot about Copilot Cowork. They are changing the pricing model for it, so it's going to be billed separately from your Copilot licenses going forward. And it's not cheap. So starting July 1st, and this is going to be direct billing through Microsoft. Tasks for Copilot Cowork, for a simple task, you're looking at 15 cents. And for a complex task, up to like $22 per task. And so if you're a heavy user for Cowork, Kim and I would be the heavier users at Alpha. You're looking at like, $100 to $300 per month just in Cowork.
Man.
Yes. Yeah. And so I kind of feel like a donkey for spending so much time on it when it's going to be so expensive. But
DJ, have they defined what they're going to consider simple versus complex?
It would be like, they call it per credit. I don't know if that's like a token type deal. How that's like a lot of things with Microsoft with pricing, it's not very clear.
Yeah. I wonder if they're going to do it like Claude credits, right? So if you use the deeper, more strategic thinking, that part of the model, it uses up more credits versus if you use the quick thinking, it uses less. I wonder if it'll be like that.
I'm sure that would be part of it. Yeah.
If you've already created tasks in Cowork that are running weekly or daily, they'll charge you however much for whatever the task is, or is it just when you create it?
My understanding, if it's scheduled, it's each time you're running that.
Each time you're running that. Is there a way to move them over to Copilot?
Yeah. I mean, we'll definitely look at that with the Copilot agent. I need a little bit more clarity on yeah, so, some stuff with whether they're going to be billing for usage for all Anthropic and that kind of stuff, or Claude models. But I will get back to you on that, Michelle.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. We are working on a few things in the background to, specifically for the dashboard that you've got going on and that kind of thing.
Which is amazing, but I imagine it's definitely one of the more expensive options.
Likely. That
And
would be my
it'll
thought as well.
probably charge you whenever it refreshes. So if it refreshes live, they'll charge you for that.
Yes. You can get a discount by buying the credits up front, but it's, I think it's 3,000 US just to kind of get started.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay,
Thank
so
you.
I'll jump. No problem. I'll jump back here. So this was a few things that I was thinking of as potential use cases, and this is on the project management side of things, Cody. This is from the perspective of a home builder. But when we're managing client projects or internal projects, we've got all different kinds of documents hanging around in SharePoint. So contracts, drawings, change orders, schedules, budgets, client communications, all that kind of stuff. And so those are the source documents. Those are the references that we've got within the notebook. And then we can start to ask Copilot different questions based on all those different sourced informations. Which selections or decisions are you still waiting on, or is the homeowner waiting on? What's their communication style? All that kind of stuff. And instead of it being unleashed across all of your different projects and that kind of stuff, it knows that it's just supposed to query based on that notebook, based on that project. Another example is, and this is one that I also get excited about because I mostly wear the finance hat here, and it's a finance notebook. And so we're referencing a finance specific library, and we can do, and so that would have all of our vendor invoices, budget versus actuals, cash flow documents. And I'm, especially in finance, it's like I'm doing a lot of tasks repeatedly each month. And so I can start to gain some leverage in notebook here by, when I'm building the cash flow, when I'm going through budget versus actuals, it's got the context from the last times I've been working on that. And then for Brenda here, and I guess this can kind of be for any leadership meeting, but we had a CAO come to us from a municipality and say, I really want to leverage Copilot to build council agendas because I'm spending so much time for our council meetings. And we can create a notebook that references all of our agendas, minutes, staff reports, all that kind of stuff from all previous council meetings or board meetings. And then we can start to, ask Copilot information about those previous meetings, but then we can also get it to draft the next agenda, and it can cross-reference all the previous ones as well. And so again, it can give us a really, really great first draft to start from. So before we had to rebuild the context every chat, and now through Copilot Notebooks, all of that information stays in one place. Less re-explaining, less hunting through files, better first drafts, clear source grounding, and just better continuity across the entire project. Again, it's only as good as what we put into it. So we got to make sure all those sources are current, that there's not conflicting information. We talked about this before, where one of the contractors we work with, they got Copilot. They asked Copilot to give them their project workflow, and they got 5 different versions of that document that their staff was working off of. And so we got to make sure that there's not duplicate information that's going to generate crappy answers for us. We also have to be careful about what we're putting in notebooks. If we're going to be sharing that, if there's anything sensitive in there, that can get, that's now publicized and can be shared across the organization. So be careful what you put in there, and then also who you're sharing it with. And like I said at the beginning, just try this out. It takes 15, maybe 30 minutes. Pick one project, add the reference data so that we can start to build that context, build those sources, and then ask one real question. try the infographic. I think that's one of the coolest parts about it, and just give it a shot. I'm happy to, if anybody wants to, I'm happy to schedule like a 15-minute call and try this out with you, and we can either brainstorm or we can start to build it together, and I can show you how to do that. And that's about it. I think we will, on our next session, we might start to get into the Copilot Studio or building agents, one of the two, especially with cowork being, being expensive now going forward. We can start to use agents in Copilot Studio to make up that lost ground. Now, are there any other questions, comments?